The library of Veltari Prime was older than most civilizations in the Council. Its towers of black stone and glass rose like quiet watchers over the capital, their surfaces etched with the histories of 1,000 species. Inside, among dim aisles and flickering archive lights, archivist scribe Aaron Voshti worked in silence. He had always believed in silence, not as weakness, but as a kind of sacred armor. Silence did not lie. Silence preserved. His fingers hovered above the ancient glyph interface as he decrypted the last sector of the Forbiddance. Segment a sealed cache buried beneath 3 layers of Imperial firewalls. He shouldn't have accessed it. Not without permission. But something in the fragment he'd stumbled upon during his lexiconal audit had whispered wrongness. A name, a word. Project Ashes. Now, a distorted hollow image hovered before him. Blue static danced around corrupted text, but enough remained. Ashes. Soul protocol. Extinction event human. His breath caught. He leaned closer. Human? The word didn't belong here. It was a ghost. A fossil from pre-council myth. The term had been outlawed centuries ago. Too dangerous, the elders had said. Too inflammatory. Too uncertain. EYRN single quotes as hands trembled as he initiated a manual stability pass. The screen shimmered. A single phrase emerged from the noise. Do not awaken the dead. We sealed the stars for a reason. He shut the terminal quickly, his heart hammering. This was more than legend. This was something buried with intent. Wiped from record not by time, but by fear. He stood in the archive's lower chamber, surrounded by walls filled with the memories of empires. And yet none of them remembered humanity. Not truly. Stories, maybe. Myths told to Ilari hatchlings. A ruthless species that warred like firestorms, that stood against entropy itself. A race too stubborn to die properly. His ancestors had dismissed it all. They said humans were fiction, invented to teach restraint. But Aaron had read the oldest layers of scripture. And now, with this fragment in hand, the myths began to whisper truths. He activated a secured uplink and sent the file under encoded seal to High Chancellor Sela Vexari, attaching a single note, "We may not be alone in history." He didn't. Sleep that night. Across the stars, the Direct Dominion surged forward. They burned across the rim worlds like wildfire, crushing neutral colonies that had no fleets to resist. Broadcasts screamed from failing relays. Council aides submitted polite protest statements. The Chamber of Sentience issued another cycle of delays. No one acted. And then came. Kelino's IV. Council satellites placed in low orbit caught the moment. A ripple in space. A fracture that shimmered like broken ice. From it, a shadow emerged, black, brutal, and wrong in design. It had no insignia, no code signature, not Ilari, not Drek, not Swarm. It did not glide like council ships or thrum. Like Zori hives, it moved like a blade being drawn from the dark. Seconds later, a broadcast hit the relay net. A shortwave burst. Garbled, frantic, the final message of a Zari scout vessel trying to flee. We saw ghosts, and they spoke in the language of extinction. The council dismissed it. Sensor errors, rim madness. No verified source, but in his tower, beneath ancient lights, Aaron Voshti sat alone, listening to the dead whisper through corrupted signals. He knew better. Something had returned. And it remembered. The sky over Kelino's 4 did not break. It screamed out. What began as a ripple in the upper stratosphere became a burning scar, tearing across the night like a wound across the stars. Ships in low orbit tried to retreat. Planetary defense grids designed by the Drek and thought impenetrable flickered as if slapped by some unseen force. Alarms rang. Signals jammed. Static swallowed command center's whole dot, then the first of them emerged. A warship not curved and elegant like the Ilari, not chitinous, and living like the Zori hives. No, this thing was angular, jagged, and ancient in design but new in terror. Matte black plating, scarred and scorched, pulsed with energy that shimmered like artificial gravity forced into anger. It bore no banners, no transponder tags, no empire. Claimed it, and yet it moved with absolute authority, like it had never needed permission. On the surface of Kelano's IV, Warlord Krathgor of the Drek Dominion stood atop the observation tower, fangs bared, claws twitching. Behind him, his officers barked orders, their voices shaky. Unidentified fleet. Advancing in Vector 6. That's not Council tech. Plasma batteries locked waiting for command. He didn't flinch. He was Drek, bred for war. Sharpened through blood. He had devoured planets. Crushed rebellions under claw and flame. And yet, as he stared into the sky, his bones itched with something alien. Fear. Double quotes fire everything, he growled. Now, the Drek fleet opened fire. Massive plasma lances streaked through space, each one hot enough to melt orbital iron. The sky lit up. For a moment, it looked like they had scored a hit. For a moment, the human vessel did not move. It absorbed the strike. No shields flared, no damage registered. It simply endured. Then it answered. A pulse, short and sharp, traveled from the vessel's spine. From its underbelly, long, rail-driven guns rotated into position with bone-snapping precision. There were no bright lights, no elegant particle beams. Just raw, physical destruction. A single round left its chamber moving faster than the eye could follow. It hit the Drek's flagship. The vessel, easily the size of a small city, disintegrated on impact. No explosion. No fireball. It simply ceased to exist, shredded at the molecular level by force alone. Seconds passed. Then the rest of the human armada emerged from the rift. Dozens, hundreds, like wolves behind a vanguard. Black shapes sliding from the abyss, organized into formations so tight and disciplined they moved like a single creature. Each ship bore the same silence. No transmission. No demand. Just the quiet knowledge of what was coming. On Veltari Prime, Aaron Voshti watched the feed collapse into static. Council surveillance drones had recorded only 3 minutes before being vaporized. In those 3 minutes, 6 Drek capital ships vanished. Orbital stations burned like paper. Aaron stood before the emergency chamber of scholars, voice trembling. "We must speak this truth," he said. The silence we inherited was not peace, it was warning. The elder scribe shifted uncomfortably. Some hissed in denial. Others blinked slowly, calculating. Only the youngest among them leaned forward. "What are you saying, Archivist?" Aaron swallowed. "I believe the humans have returned. And they do not intend to speak, they intend to be remembered." Back on Kelanos 4, the battle was no longer a battle. It was a massacre. The Drek formation scattered, firing wildly. Human vessels cut through them like predators through fog. Some Drek ships tried to ram. They disintegrated before reaching minimum distance. Others surrendered, broadcasting white flags across all frequencies. No response came, but the humans didn't fire at them. They ignored them. Only those who resisted were erased. And then, as quickly as they had come, the human fleet halted. Not a retreat, not a withdrawal, just stillness. They floated above the ruined battlefield like sentinels. A single transmission pierced the void. Not Council. Frequency. Not Drek. A language no one had heard in centuries. We are human. And we have. Return. On Veltari Prime, in the Grand Council chamber, High Chancellor Sela Vexery stood in pale silence. Her advisors clamored. Diplomats shouted over one another. Generals pushed for war preparations. Analysts tried to explain the impossible, but she knew this wasn't an incursion. It wasn't the start of a campaign. It was a declaration. Not of war, but of existence. And it was just the beginning. The ruins of Kalanos 4 still burned when the humans began to rebuild them. For centuries, the Drek Dominion had ruled the planet with a scorched fist slave pits beneath obsidian towers, mines carved into the bones of mountains, orbital defense, rings that glowed with stolen power. All of it now lay in jagged ruin. The once proud citadel of the warlords was a shattered husk, its walls melted into slag. And yet, there were no screams, no executions, no thunder of orbital bombardment raining. Down from above. There was silence. A new kind of silence. In that silence, human dropships descended like falling monoliths. They landed across the broken crust of the planet, precise and slow, their engines humming like ancient machines stirring from long sleep. Doors opened. Soldiers stepped out, not in ceremonial armor, not adorned with conquest sigils, but in battle-worn plating, practical and stripped of all ornament. They carried no banners. They made no speeches. Instead, they began clearing rubble, one by one. They freed civilians trapped beneath collapsed spires. They administered medkits, set up portable shelters, restored power to grid lines the Drek had left to rot. Survivors watched in terrified confusion as the monsters of legend handed them water and blankets. No words were spoken unless necessary. And even then, the humans spoke softly, as if the sound of their voices might disturb something sacred. But not all who watched were civilians. In the shadows of a ruined watchtower, a Drek survivor named Sarkath crawled through twisted metal, one arm shattered, half his face burned. He had seen his warlord die in front of him, vaporized without honor. He had witnessed the great plasma batteries fail against those black ships. Now hidden and bleeding, he stared down at the humans below. And he saw something worse than death. Discipline. They were not conquering this world. They were claiming it. Back in the Alari Dominion, Archivist Aaron Voshti stood before the High Linguistics Tribunal, his voice echoing across stone walls etched with the language of 1,000 civilizations. Transmission they sent, he said. It was in a dialect that has not existed for over 400 standard cycles. He tapped the hologram projector. A translation appeared. We are human, and we have returned. The tribunal elder leaned forward, his 6 eyes narrowed. That cannot be confirmed. You're interpreting fragments, echoes. No, Aaron said. Firmly, I ran the waveform through Forbidden's archives. This dialect comes from Soul-era broadcast recordings believed to have been lost in the Ash Years. The elder hissed. Those archives were sealed for a reason. We do not dredge up myths. Aaron met her gaze. Then we will be devoured by them. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the US Retribution, Admiral Sira Malkov stared at the live feed from Kalanos IV. The screen showed human engineers reactivating the planetary grid. A child alien, small with shimmering scales, watched from behind. A broken pillar as a soldier handed her a heat pack. She flinched, but didn't run. Malkov didn't smile. She didn't blink. Status report? She said. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Asher Cattle, stepped forward. The last of the Drek resistance has been neutralized. Local population, mostly non-combatant labor castes, no threats. Civilian. Casualties, minimal. 3 accidental. 1 from structural collapse. Medics are attending. Malkov nodded once. Then came a new signal. Low-frequency burst intercepted from a nearby star system. Encrypted. Council-grade. Asher looked at her. They're watching. Of course they are, she said. Do we respond? Malkov stepped forward, looking out through the bridge's reinforced viewport into the black sea of space. "No," she said. "They already know what this is." But that wasn't entirely true. The Council didn't know what this was. Not yet. They thought it was a power play, a show of force. Perhaps even a warning. They were wrong. This was archaeology. On the surface of Kalanos IV, deep beneath the city ruins, human engineers uncovered something unexpected, a vault, sealed with biometrics that matched Sol-era human DNA. One of them, Private Lena Arden, stood breathless as the door hissed open. Cold air rushed out, stale and ancient. Inside, thousands of data cores, untouched, waiting. A symbol etched onto the central chamber wall, the burning sun of Earth. Lena single quotes S. Voice crackled through the comms. "Admiral, I think we found a soul relay." Aboard the Retribution, silence fell. Malkov turned slowly. "Send everything. Get me a clean scan. Activate the archive team." Asher hesitated. "You think they left something for us?" Malkov's voice dropped. "Low, I think they left everything." Across the galaxy, in the heart of the Council's core world, Chancellor Sela Vexery stood in the Grand Assembly Hall as the latest footage from Kalanos 4 flickered to life. She watched as the human soldiers carried the wounded, erected food shelters, stabilized planetary climate controls. One by one, the delegates fell silent. A Zeral general whispered, "They're rebuilding?" A Zari broodmother clicked nervously. "Why help the natives? They're not even human." Vexery said nothing. Then the final clip played. A human ship leaving orbit, its engines glowing blue, paused just long enough for a single message to flash across the Council's listening stations. Not a threat, not a demand. Just one sentence. "We will restore what you erased." Vex Ari felt her pulse rise. Not out of fear, not yet, but out of something worse. Remorse. IYRN Vashti's voice echoed again in her memory. "We didn't bury the past. We locked it away. And now the key has come back." The diplomatic shuttle shimmered into real space above the ruins of Kalanos 4 like a sliver of glass gliding across ash. It was small, delicate, and designed not for war but for ceremony-polished wings of silver blue, council crests etched in every language of the core species. It was the kind of ship meant to inspire peace at first. Sight. It inspired nothing. Not in the shadow of the human fleet. The us. Retribution loomed above the planet like a god carved from the void. The rest of its armada formed a silent wall behind it, each ship locked in formation with terrifying precision. No movement wasted, no signal sent. The human vessels had been motionless for hours, as if waiting for something only they understood. Within the shuttle, High Chancellor Sela Vexery sat still, every muscle tight beneath her ceremonial robe. Her silver eyes reflected the blinking lights on the console as her pilot announced final docking protocols. "They're allowing us to board," the pilot whispered. "No escorts, no instructions. Just a single clearance code." Vexery exhaled. "And the code?" He glanced at her. "Sol 117. Her heart skipped. Sol, the myth made flesh. The system every council record had quietly erased. As the airlock hissed open, the interior of the Retribution revealed itself not in gold or marble, not in the opulence of council grandeur, but in brutal functionality. Gunmetal walls, reinforced plating, glowing strips of tactical light. Every corridor screamed of war readiness, of a people who had spent lifetimes preparing not to conquer, but to survive. A single human stood, waiting. Tall, armored, helmet off. Her face was sharp, unflinching. Her eyes were ice. Admiral Sura. "Malkov," Vexery said softly. The woman didn't offer a hand, didn't bow, didn't even nod. You asked for a meeting, Malkov said. You have 5 minutes. Vexery followed without protest. The human soldiers that flanked them moved like ghosts, silent, coordinated, alert. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They had the weight of history behind their eyes. They entered a chamber unlike any council meeting room. It was a war room, maps projected in real time across every wall. Planets marked in red, yellow, and blue. Council systems being scanned. Drek holdouts being crushed in real time. Malkov motioned to the center table. Speak. Vexery swallowed. I've come to ask for understanding. For peace. Malkov said nothing. The council did not know, could not have known that you were still out there. We believed humanity lost. Consumed by your own wars, your homeworld Earth vanished. There were no signals, no ruins. We thought. You thought it was easier to forget, Malkov said quietly. Easier to erase us from the archive than to ask why no one came when we called for help. Vexery's throat tightened. We found the soul silence protocol, Malkov continued. We decrypted council black files. You sealed our systems. Redirected all distress signals into dead space. Not out of mercy, out of fear. Vexery stood still, unable to argue. Because it was true. May LKOV turned, activating a projection in the center of the room. An audio file crackled to life. A human voice, desperate and trembling. To any who hear this, this is Outpost Terra 9. Food is gone. Orbital shields are down. The Drek are landing. We begged for help. Is anyone out there? Please. Earth has already fallen. We're all that's left. Please. Then silence. Malkov let it play again. Vexery's voice cracked. How many? Of those, how many calls? Malkov's gaze burned into her. Enough that we buried our dead in towers made of speakers. The words hit like thunder. You let us die, she said. And now you ask for peace. Vexery didn't flinch. I ask for purpose. If you intend to remake the galaxy, then we must understand you. Or none of us will survive. Malkov stared. For a long moment, you want to understand us? She said. Then you need to stop thinking like rulers and start thinking like ghosts. She turned to the wall and changed the projection. A new map appeared, one that showed council space in its entirety. Over it, the growing pattern of human expansion, not jagged, not chaotic, but precise, strategic. They weren't just retaking planets, they were reconstructing something. This isn't war, Malkov said. This is memory. Vexery blinked. What? We're not here to conquer, Malkov said. We're here to rebuild what was taken. And when we find who erased Earth, we will not ask for answers. A chill ran through Vexery. You believe it was the council? I believe someone inside it made sure Earth disappeared, Malkov said, and we intend to find them. Vexery took a slow breath. Then let me help. Malkov arched a brow. You? Yes, Vexery said. You may not believe it, but there are still some within the council who seek the truth. We may be fractured, we may have failed you, but we are not all liars. Malkov considered. Then, without warning, she reached into a compartment beneath the table and slid a data core across to Vexery. Decode that. It's from one of our recovered vaults beneath Kelena's IV. It's encrypted in an ancient Alari cipher. Your cipher. Vexery froze. You're saying the council hid this? I'm saying someone wanted it buried, Malkov said. And now, we dig. The meeting ended without ceremony. Malkov walked her back to the airlock dock. Before she departed, Vexery turned. What happens after you finish reclaiming what was lost? Malkov paused. That depends, she said, on how much of the galaxy still believes we're myths. And then she was gone. Aboard her shuttle, Vexery stared down at the data core in her Hands. Her advisors demanded answers. She gave them none, because the truth wasn't just coming. It had already arrived. The council never saw it coming. Not truly. They had sent envoys. They had watched human fleets on their holoscreens. They had whispered of treaties and postured in emergency summits. But still, they clung to the idea that this was manageable, containable, temporary. Then came the collapse of the Drek core worlds. One by one, systems that had been fortified for centuries, systems that had withstood swarm incursions and Alari embargoes fell without a sound. No orbital sieges. No drawn-out planetary bombardments. The human fleets arrived, disabled defenses in seconds, landed without resistance, and then they rebuilt. This was the part no one could explain. On the council world of Veridon, Chancellor Sela Vexery watched in cold disbelief as live feed from Director Prime played across the emergency chamber. A city burned, but not from destruction. The humans had cleared it of warlords, of guard posts, and execution pits. And in the center of the former palace, where once the Drek had hung trophies of conquest, now stood scaffolding, generators, engineers, in exosuits working side by side with liberated civilians. No overseers, no chains, just work, order, efficiency. They weren't erasing the planet, they were converting it. Council delegate from the Zaral Syndicate hissed across the table. What are they doing? Why not crush it and move on? Vexery didn't respond, because she understood now this wasn't war. This was resurrection. Far from the Council's inner systems. In the spiraling black of Sector She-4, once an ancient trade route, two human ships dropped from subspace. Their hulls bore the scarring of old battles, yet they moved with surgical grace. Aboard the US Judgment, a team of archive specialists moved through the remains of an abandoned research station. Most of it had been gutted during the early years of the Drek conquest, left to drift in silence, until now. Captain Iko Malrin led the recovery team. Her fingers trembled slightly as she stepped into the core data vault. Something about this place felt wrong. Not haunted, but cleansed. Like someone had come before them and removed something vital. Bring the power grid online, she said. Her technician nodded, rerouting through a portable II array. A moment passed. Then the lights flickered. A holographic projection came to life in the center of the room, a council seal, blinking. Corrupted. AIKO single quotes as eyes widened. Is that? The tech nodded. Encrypted signature. Ilaria origin. High Chancellor clearance. Iko activated the feed. A log played. Distorted. The image of an Ilari scientist flickered into view. Her eyes panicked. Earth's coordinates must be wiped. By order of Silence Protocol Directive 7. All probes redirected. Record sealed. Even internal archives must be purged. If this species returns, they must not find their home. Iko froze. The log ended with a burst of static. She turned to her second in command. Send it to Admiral Malkov. Now? Aboard the US Retribution, the moment the transmission reached the command deck, Admiral Sira Malkov knew the game had changed. She listened to the recording 3 times. Not once did her face flinch, but her silence thickened, heavy and suffocating. Lieutenant Asher stood beside her, fists clenched. They did it. They really did it. Malkov nodded slowly. They tried to unmake us, Asher growled. What now? Malkov looked out into the stars. Now we prove we can't be unmade. On Veltari Prime, Aaron Voshti worked in silence. The data core Malkov had given him spread across 4 decoding rigs. He barely ate, barely slept. The cipher was Ilari, yes, but a forgotten dialect, a ceremonial pattern used only by Inner Circle Council architects. But at last, it cracked. And what emerged was not just damning. It was cataclysmic. A map, a timestamp, and a name, Project Veilfire. It wasn't just about sealing Earth's fate. was about redirecting history itself. An entire program run by the Fathomagmine. Old Council designed to erase not just humanity, but every record of their rise. Their alliances, their technology, their home. And the worst parts of it were still active. Aaron stumbled back from the console, his pulse roaring. They hadn't just watched humanity burn. They had turned off the cameras. The next day, without warning, every council-aligned long-range relay received the same untraceable signal. It pierced through jamming, firewalls, and encryption. It was a single video. A recovered archive from the station in Shu 4. The Alari scientist's face. Her confession. Her signature. The silence protocol revealed. Panic spread faster than light. Alliances frayed. Accusations erupted. In the council chamber, members screamed at one another. The Alari delegation denied responsibility. Old allies turned cold. And above them all, in every major system, new signals began to appear. Not threats. Not demands. Just beacons. Human beacons. Systems. Lighting up like candles in the dark. One by one. A message followed each activation. You tried to erase us. But now we are everywhere. In that moment, the galaxy understood. The war was never for territory. It was for truth, and humanity was winning. The fire that consumed the council didn't come from weapons. It came from knowledge. Every corner of the known galaxy had seen the transmission. The Alari scientist's confession, the silence protocol. The quiet, measured voice admitting to the unthinkable, not just abandonment, not just betrayal, but deliberate erasure. The truth detonated through the galactic order, more effectively than any superweapon. Entire worlds rioted. History professors across the Zeral provinces tore down their own classrooms in shame. The Zari swarm purged their archives and executed 4 of their hivekeepers for complicity. Even the Drek remnants, what little was left of them, sent encrypted pleas to the human fleet, begging for clemency. None were answered. But no reaction was more intense than what stirred inside the council itself. High Chancellor Sela Vixeri stood in the grand chamber as chaos erupted around her. Delegates screamed across languages, clicking and snarling and booming in layered dialects. Old alliances shattered in real time. Trade pacts were dissolved. Security guarantees revoked, and above all of it, the unspoken fear took shape. What would humanity do now? They had every reason to burn the galaxy down, and they had the power to do it. Vexery stood slowly, raised her voice just enough to be heard, and said, "I need a direct channel to Admiral Malkov, now." Aboard the US Retribution, Admiral Sarah. Malkov reviewed the spread of beacon activations across council space. Her fleet had already expanded into 12 new systems without a single shot fired. Local governors surrendered before human ships, even entered orbit. Some called it fear. She called it clarity. Each new system brought infrastructure, cooperation, silence. No looting, no war crimes. Only order. Yet still, something gnawed at her. As the latest council communication came through, her expression didn't change. Her officers stiffened when they saw the signature. High Chancellor Vexery priority. Transmission. Malkov activated it. Vex Ari single quotes S face appeared. Pale, calm, exhausted. "You saw the footage," she said. "I did," Malkov replied. "Then you know what happened. You know the council lied. Not just to you, but to itself." Malkov's voice was ice. "Truth doesn't change outcome." "No," Vexery said, "but maybe it changes what comes next." Malkov waited. "You have every justification to end us," Vexery said. "But I'm asking you not to." Silence. Then. Malkov leaned forward. "Why shouldn't we?" Vexery hesitated only a moment, because we were not all complicit. Because some of us fought to reveal the truth. Because you've already won, and what you do next will define not just what humanity is, but what it becomes. Malkov's jaw clenched. We're not interested in redemption. Then what are you interested in? Malkov tapped a command. The screen behind her lit up. A map of the galaxy, expanding sectors now pulsing with human blue. She pointed to the center where a single red marker glowed. Earth. Vexery narrowed her eyes. You found it? No, Malkov said. Not yet, but we're close. And when we do, we'll know who gave the final order. Vexery's voice dropped. And if it was someone still in power? Malkov's silence was the only answer. Hours later, aboard an old observation station orbiting the remnants of Helios Sigma, Archivist Aaron Voshti stood beside a human officer as the final layer of encryption broke on the ancient council drive. They had recovered lines of code on SPOOLED images, directives, names, and then a signature. A full authorization log. Seal directive. Soul exile. Authorized by Chancellor Drayan Jor. Aaron's breath hitched. He was Ilari, he whispered. Third seat on the High Council. He died over 200 years ago. Which means, the officer said, this wasn't a collective decision. It was done in the shadows. But the council covered it up, Aaron murmured. They buried the evidence. They let the silence become history. Yes, the officer said. And now silence is ending. Later that night, Malkov stood. Alone on the bridge of the Retribution, her gaze locked on the stars. Her fleet now held the outer edge of the Council's core territory. Her officers awaited orders. She gave none. Her thoughts lingered on Earth. On the calls that went unanswered. On the children buried in bunkers. On the fleet that died in the dark. And then, as if summoned by thought, a new signal appeared. Not council. Not DREK. An old human. Emergency code. Long thought dead. Her heart stopped. The signal wasn't from a system that controlled. It came from deep within the null zone. No one had charted it in over 500 years. She activated the feed. Static. Then a burst of distorted audio. A human voice. This is Outpost Sol 13. Repeat. Outpost. Sol 13. Survivors holding. Status. Critical. Malkov stared. The voice was ancient. Recorded in a dialect no one used anymore. But it was real. The transmission was real. Earth might not be lost. Earth might still be out there. Forgotten. Abandoned. Alive. LLKOV turned to her bridge crew, her voice low and final. Change course. To where, Admiral? Asher asked. Home. Space itself held its breath. Beyond the fractured edges of council space, where star charts turned blank and ancient engines feared to drift, the US Retribution surged forward into the dark. It carried no banners. It broadcast no signal. And yet, every species left in the galaxy felt the shift, as if something long buried was clawing its way back through time. Aboard the bridge, Admiral Sira Malkov stood as still as the void itself, her eyes locked on the singular red dot pulsing. At the center of the map, Outpost Sol-13. They had found it, or what was left. The transmission loop was primitive, centuries old. No voice answered their hails. Just a single phrase repeating in a broken loop, caught in time like a heartbeat too stubborn to stop. Outpost Sol-13 status, critical. Survivors holding. Asher watched from beside her. It shouldn't be broadcasting. The text too old. Malkov didn't respond because she knew. It wasn't the tech. It was the memory. As the human fleet moved deeper into the null zone, every ship fell silent. No chatter. No system-wide comms. Even the internal sensors seemed to dim as if the beam fleet itself mourned what they might find. And then it appeared. A planet. Blue-gray, scorched in some places, lush in others. Orbital rings shattered. Debris fields thick and ancient, and yet unmistakable. The shape, the orbit. The ~Earth. Asher single quotes S. Breath caught. That's impossible. But Malkov didn't blink. Prepare landing protocols, she said. And alert the other carriers. Full tactical recon. No civilian crews. Asher hesitated. You think there's a threat? I think we need to be ready for what the truth looks like, she answered. When the dropships pierced the atmosphere, the clouds didn't part with ceremony. They just drifted aside, quiet and heavy with forgotten rain. As they neared the surface, sensors picked up ancient cities swallowed by vines, bones of towers cracked and leaning, roadways broken and overgrown. Satellites drifted uselessly above, blinking with dead light. But on the northern hemisphere, nestled in the crater of an old fortress world once called Geneva, they saw movement. Structures still intact. Lights. Heat signatures. Malkov's ship touched down on a scorched landing pad, half covered in moss. As the hatch opened, a gust of wind carried the scent of Earth, real Earth, not terraformed simulation, not synthetic atmospheric blend. It was sharp, raw. Ancient. Soldiers fanned out in silence. Then, from the shadow of the compound's inner gate, someone stepped forward. He was old. Not alien. Not hybrid. Human. His eyes were glassy with age, skin pale from years without sun, but his stance, it was military, disciplined. He saluted. Malkov stared. Name? She asked, barely above a whisper. Commander. Ryan Marcus, he said. United Earth Command. Designation, Sol 13. Asher whispered. He's from before the fall. Malkov's voice cracked. How long have you held this station? He blinked. We never stopped. They led her inside. It wasn't a city. It wasn't even a base. It was a time capsule. Generators powered by salvaged cores still hummed. Data terminals, modified dozens of times, still glowed with fragmented logs. Children stared at the soldiers with wide eyes, having never seen anyone. Outside their outpost in generations, there were gardens, makeshift schools, weapons polished and stacked, metals passed down like heirlooms. And in the center, deep below ground, a chamber holding drives older than anything the fleet had seen. The core archive of Earth. When Malkov stepped inside, the lights flickered on by instinct. A hologram appeared. Woman's voice. If you're seeing this, you've made it back. Gasps echoed across the chamber. This is First Admiral Lenya Voss, United Earth Command. If the Exodus fails, if the Council turns, if our allies forget us, then this is what we leave behind. Not just data. Not just names, but the truth. A second archive loaded. Malkov single quotes as hands trembled as she opened it. They watched. Footage of the final battle above Seoul. Ships burning. Distress calls unanswered. Humans abandoning planets under siege. Then, the Council encryption order. The rerouting of beacons. The veilfire directive. All confirmed. Then something else. One final entry. Classified. Buried. Beneath hundreds of false logs. A message from a Council operative to Chancellor Dranjor. Protocol completed. All Earth-based routes sealed. Subject wiped from all charts. Survivors on Sol 13 neutralized. Any breach will trigger contingency 01. The file ended. Malkov's voice was stone. They knew. Asher's fists clenched. They tried to finish it. But they failed, she said. The Council didn't receive a warning. They received a funeral. Above the core worlds. The full might of the human fleet arrived, not firing, not threatening. Simply present. A presence no longer ignore. Vex Ari stood on the Council balcony, watching the sky as ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever known blocked out the stars, And then, a signal. Open frequency, Malkov's voice. You lied to us. You buried us. You broke every oath you ever made to peace. We were forgotten, but we did not forget. We have returned. And now, the future is ours to define. What followed was not conquest. It was restructuring. Vexery stepped down. The council dissolved. Planet by planet, species by species, the galaxy voted with its heart, not out of fear, but out of understanding. The humans did not punish. They simply led. Weeks later, aboard a rebuilt orbital station overlooking the still recovering Earth, Aaron Voshti walked alongside Malkov through the archives. He stopped in front of the last corridor lined with glowing tablets, each bearing names. The ones who died in silence, he said. Now remembered. Malkov nodded. No more ghosts. He paused. What now, Admiral? She looked out the viewport into the vast unknown. Now, she said, we build something better, and for the first time in 5 centuries. Earth rose again.